Goodfellas, The Godfather, Scarface, these are all films. Yes, I said it, they are films. Very, very good films. Yet lurking in the darkest corner of all film criticism, there is a sleeping giant, just waiting for the finest mind in all of cinema to meticulously analyse. And that film is Bugsy Motherfucking Malone. Never in all the history of cinema has a film captured the intrinsic complexities of mob life with such accuracy. I personally don't think I have the psychological prowess to unpack such a film. So instead, today I will be analysing another underrated mob film, Once Upon a Time in America.
New York, 19.
Underrated might be an over exaggeration, but it did make a good title for the video. Undoubtedly, however, the film is definitely under-discussed. There are only a few videos analysing the poetry within this film. This 1984 epic, directed by Sergio Leone, starring Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and James Woods, unpacks the mob lifestyle with such beauty and horror that it stirs up such powerful emotions within the viewers. If you haven't watched the film, please turn the video off now and come back in around 15 years after you finally finish this long ass film. The film follows the life of this scumbag Noodles from a child to a weary old regretful man whose many sins have burdened him down. The power of this film for me stems from the contrast between the immense cruelty demonstrated by the characters and the immense beauty curated by Leone and Morricone. If you don't believe me, take this interview from the foot enthusiast entrepreneur himself, Mr. Tarantino, as evidence, where he labels them as the worst gangsters ever put to film.
A poeticness and a beauty about the film. Yet, the film probably presents the most vicious group of gangsters that maybe I've ever seen until just recently in like these South Central LA movies. I mean, these four guys are about as cold-blooded and brutal as any gangsters ever portrayed in films.
Any problem?
Cockeye, Patsy, Max, and Noodles are all sadistic psychopaths, delighting in the torturing and suffering of others. The gang take whatever they want, whenever they want, generating their insane levels of decrepit evil. Yet throughout all this debauchery, the poetry of the film is never ever lost. I will dissect two scenes from the film to illustrate my point. The scene in which little Dominic is murdered, and the infamous dinner sequence and its horrific aftermath. The opening wide establishing shot reveals the children beneath the Brooklyn Bridge. This is easily the most iconic shot of the whole entire film and continues the visual theme of the children being scaled as minuscule against their surrounding environment. Such framing of the children suggests they are powerless in the face of the environment they are surrounded by. The New York the children inhabit is a cruel, sexual, and violent world, and the buildings towering over the children symbolize how these cruel values are perpetuated onto the gang by a corrupted society. They are so small set against the evil world they find themselves in. Little Dominic's dancing within this shot takes the viewer's eye, indicating his innocence and how when he dies, any sense of innocence for the gang will die with him, catapulting them into acts of moral depravity. After this famous shot, Dominic descends under the bridge and spots Bugsy, turning and running away from him. The musical shift within this moment, from diegetic music of Cockeye's flute to the non-diegetic soundtrack conducted by Morricone, is masterful, cementing this film as pure poetry. Listen.
Bugsy's coming, run!
You see how dramatically the music shifts, exploding in our ears, correlating with the rising action. The slow-mo that Leone employs here allows for the viewer to soak in the tension of this crucial moment, echoing many of his spaghetti westerns. The gang successfully hide behind cover as Bugsy sprints around the corner. Yet, Dominic, being significantly younger, smaller, and more naive than the rest of his friends, sticks to the middle of the road and is gunned down. The scene immediately slows down, changing pace as Noodles cradles Dominic in his arms whilst he dies. A critical moment for him as a character, evident in the way he brings it up to Deborah during their dinner at the beach. Morricone masterfully switches from using the flute that Cockeye was playing to utilizing the swelling sounds of strings, vocalizing this emotional crescendo. Noodles has lost his friend, and it is tragic, although the monster he will eventually become is alluded to in this scene. Noodles kills Bugsy brutally with his knife, and the police officer who also attacks him, thus unveiling Noodles' capacity for intense violence. These murders seem to have no psychological effect upon him, desensitizing him to acts of heinous violence. The ramifications of such a desensitization to murder ricochet throughout the narrative. If one is capable of murder, then one is also surely capable of sexual cruelty, as you will see later in the film. The scene ends with Noodles going to jail, and this is the last time we see them as children. The last time they have any kind of moral compass. Now, obviously as gangsters, and especially those of the strong silent type, e.g. Gary Cooper, this trauma of losing Dominic isn't really discussed in the film, partly because the gang are so depraved, it probably never even crossed their minds, switching their heads to their next political, economic, or sexual conquest. But it is brought up when Noodles takes Deborah out for dinner. Deborah is pure and innocent, enabling for Noodles to connect with any shred of emotional capacity that might possibly remain within his soul. She consistently dresses in white throughout her interactions with Noodles, and this is no different within the date sequence. She is dressed in an elegant white dress, carrying white flowers, and the decor surrounding the restaurant is also entirely white. This generates an element of romance throughout the scene, which is palpable. The whole set piece is just utterly gorgeous and highly romantic. Deborah converses with the waiters in French briefly, establishing her as Noodles' moral and intellectual superior. She reads books, she wants to know everything, which reflects the environment she was brought up in. Lest we forget, her and Noodles were brought up in the exact same neighbourhood, yet this highlights the inherent differences between Noodles and Deborah. Despite his constant infatuation with her, they are psychological opposites. Noodles takes everything and uses it to satisfy his sexual and economic desires. But Deborah wants to know everything and use it to charge her successful acting career, carving out a life for herself for her own doing and knowledge, not taking it by force, unlike Noodles. She summarizes their entire relationship.
Me up and you'd throw away the key, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
She realizes that Noodles would take everything from her, holding her back from her true artistic potential. And he knows this too. Robert De Niro is a master of acting with his eyes, and his quick glance down during this exchange of dialogue exemplifies this. He realizes this too, agreeing with her, but he cannot psychologically process the concept that she wants to exist without him. So as he does with everything else in his life, he seeks to take her with force. After this dinner and the dancing, Deborah and Noodles go to the beach, and Noodles opens up to her, revealing the extent of his feelings towards her. Within this section of the scene, Noodles is laying down. He is emotionally vulnerable, whilst Deborah leans over him, suggesting that she has some form of emotional power over Noodles here. This is where Noodles brings up Dominic, opening up to her, making her rejection of him even more hurtful. Just to clarify, this in no way whatsoever justifies his utter cruelty towards her. Thus, realizing he cannot have this life with her he so deeply desires, he violates her, R-ing her in the back of the taxi on the way home, removing the innocence that Deborah once held due to him not being able to accept a reality in which she does not love him enough to stay.
Since she will not stay with him, Noodles punishes her for this in the most evil, decrepit way possible, completely destroying the relationship they held and rendering him a cruel, heartless man, laying the path for the regretful, pathetic fool we see in the film's final act.